I'm going to be going over every algebra question on the SAT. In this video, which is part 4, we'll be talking about linear equations in 2 variables, specifically going over all of the easy problems from the SAT online question bank. In the video description below, I'll include every question ID of all the problems in this set, along with timestamps and descriptions of what the problem is talking about, so that if you do the problems on your own, you can skip to specific ones, or if you want to focus on specific topics, you can find them. You can see that, again, all the problems in this specific video will be 1 out of 3, which is the easy difficulty. They're all algebra linear equations in 2 variables. I already have 3 videos that go over all of the 1 variable ones, and I will be putting up problems to go over every problem at some point. So diving in, we have a word problem. It says a store sells 2 different sized containers of a certain Greek yogurt. The store's sales of this Greek yogurt totaled $1,277.94 last month. The equation 5.48x plus 7.30y equals 1,277.94 represents the situation where x is the number of smaller containers sold and y is the number of larger containers sold. According to the equation, which of the following represents the price in dollars of each smaller container? All right, well, if x is the number of smaller containers, then the reason that you're multiplying something by x is to find the total amount of sale, or the total money value of the sales of those ones. So you get that by doing the price per one of them, which in this case it's 5.48, times the number that you sold. Then over here, y is the number of large containers sold, so 730 would be the price per large container. So you could do the price per unit times the number of units will be the total amount, or total money value of the ones that were sold. So, it's just kind of interpreting where this is coming from. Again, x is the number of smaller ones, so this 5.48 corresponds to the price per unit. Let me just make sure they said smaller or larger. They did say smaller, all right? So this just make sure you check, even though I was already 95% sure, I just wanted to go back to make sure that I didn't get it wrong. All right, here we have line K is defined by y equals 3x plus 15. Line J is perpendicular to line K in the xy plane. What is the slope of line J? Well, first, if this is K, the slope of a line is, if you write it in y equals mx plus b form, like this, which is slope-intercept form. They call it that because the m is the slope, the y, or the b is the intercept, the y-intercept. So in this case, our slope will be 3 for J, or no, for K. Sorry, K is this one. J is perpendicular to it. So a perpendicular slope will be the opposite of the reciprocal. So if our slope for K is 3, the opposite means that you change the sign. So if it was negative, you would make it positive. In this case, it's positive, so we want to make it negative. So it's going to be a negative slope. And reciprocal means you flip it. So if it's a fraction, the denominator becomes the numerator becomes the denominator. If it's an integer value, like 3, then you could think of that as it starts as 3 over 1. So when you flip it, it becomes 1 over 3. It's the multiplicative inverse. So negative 1/3 will be our slope. And the reason that this works, I think a lot of times people just memorize that rule. But if you have a perpendicular line, it means it meets it at a 90-degree angle. If one of them is going up, then for it to be perpendicular, the other one has to be going down. So that's why you do the additive inverse, or the opposite. So that's why we changed it from positive to negative. Our first one was going up, so our perpendicular one should be going down. And then for the reciprocal part, think about if one of the lines is really steep, then the other one has to be proportionally kind of flat, right? Because if they're both steep, right, if you had like positive 3 and negative 3, then that doesn't make a perpendicular line, right? Those lines would be an acute angle here and an obtuse angle here. We want it to be 90-degree angles, 90-degree angles. So in this case, we had fairly steep, right? It's 3 times steeper than just a line that's y equals x. So this one is going to be relatively flat. Before I move on, because you get a calculator, one thing that you might want to do, now make sure that your calculator, is kind of to scale. Sometimes the screen is a bit wider, and then they'll have the markers be not equally spaced for the y and the x-axis. But if you want to check it, just write y equals 3x, or y equals 3x plus 15, and then write another line that uses the slope that you chose. So you could do like y equals negative 1/3 x. You could do plus something, or just leave it as y equals negative 1/3 x, and then see where they cross if they look like it's about 90 degrees. Again, that could be thrown off a little bit if your scale is not correct on the scale, or if the scale is not equal. But it's just a good way to at least confirm that it could be perpendicular. A mixture consisting of only vitamin D and calcium has a total mass of 150 grams. The mass of vitamin D in the mixture is 50 grams. So this is 50 for the vitamin D. What is the mass in grams of calcium? So everything in it is either vitamin D or calcium. So we don't know what the calcium is, but we know that the total is 150. Right? So this one is just asking, what do you have to add to 50 to get to 150? That would be 100. Or you can think of it, if you prefer, get the C alone, subtract 50 from both sides, which leaves you with C is equal to 100. Right? Either way, it would be the same. This one really could have been in the easy section, but I think it's just because the word problem might throw some people off, the mixture part. Here we've got some tables. Y equals x plus 4. Which table gives 3 values of x and their corresponding values of y in the given equation? All right, so what's nice is they all are 0, 1, and 2. So we can just figure out, using this equation, what the outputs would be if your input were 0, 1, and 2. So we could do y equals 0 plus 4. You're just substituting the input, the x value, in for the x. So put it right here. Y equals 0 plus 4, that would mean y equals 4. So when x is 0, y will be 4, which the only option is A. That works for that. So you could just circle A. I'm going to do the other ones just to confirm that it's right, and it won't take that much longer. When x is 1, 1 plus 4 is 5, so y should be 5. 1, 5. Sorry, this checks. And then we could do when x is 2, 2 plus 4 would be 6. So 2 and 6, that also checks. All right, so A is your answer there. You could have done it even just from the 0, but that's all you got to do. 3A plus 4B equals 25. A shipping company charged a customer $25 to ship some small boxes and some large boxes. The equation above represents the relationship between A, the number of small boxes, and B, the number of large boxes. So A is the small boxes, number of, and B is our number of large boxes. The customer had shipped, or that's the number that they had shipped. If the customer had 3 small boxes shipped, how many large boxes were shipped? All right, well, they had 3 small boxes, so 3 will go in for A. We got 3 times our number of small boxes is 3. So 3 times 3 plus 4B is equal to 25. How many large boxes were shipped? So we're just trying to find B, the number of large boxes. Plug that in. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 4B equals 25. And now to solve for B, we're just going to get our B's alone by subtracting 9 from both sides. That means 4B is equal to 16. Now from there, you could just think what times 4 makes 16, so B is going to be 4. Or if you prefer, the opposite of times 4 would be divide by 4. So B will be 16 over 4, which is 4. So we got 4 small ones. Now, just to check it really quickly, because especially if you have a calculator, it wouldn't take any time at all. You can just plug in. So they told us that A was 3, right? The number of small ones was 3. So we could do 3 times 3 plus, now we use our answer. We've got 4 times 4, and that's going to give us 9 plus 16 equals 25. 25 equals 25, it checks out. All right, so just plug in your answer, or if you've got different variable values, plug them in, see if it actually works. In this case, it does. All right, what is the equation of the line that passes through the point 0, 5, and is parallel to the graph of y equals 7x plus 4 in the xy plane? What's nice is they actually gave us the y-intercept here. Sometimes they'll give you a point that's not the y-intercept, but they gave us that. And if they say it's parallel to this line, parallel means that it's the same slope. Parallel lines are lines, they have the same slope, they never cross, they run parallel to each other the same distance the entire time. If we find the slope of this one, which is 7, again, y equals mx plus b, right, slope-intercept form, m is your slope. So our slope is going to be 7, and our y-intercept is 0, 5. So when x is 0, y is 5. That would mean your y-intercept, the y value, is 5. So we just plug that in. Y equals mx plus b. Well, our m is 7, and our b is 5. So it'd be like that. Y equals 7x plus 5, which is option B. I'm trying to think if there's someone you could do to check it. I guess if you had your calculator, you could type this in and then see if it actually crosses at 0, 5. Maybe graph this one as well and see if they're actually parallel, which they should be. All right, x plus y equals 75. The equation above relates the number of minutes x Maria spends running each day and the number of minutes y she spends biking each day. In the equation, what does the number 75 represent? What's the total of the two, the sum of the two? So that means that she's running running or biking a total of 75 minutes. So the number of minutes spent running each day, no. The number of minutes spent biking each day, no. That would only be if she was only doing one of those on that given day. The total number of minutes spent running and biking each day. Number of minutes spent biking for each minute spent. No, that doesn't make any sense. So it's C. So the combined running and biking. A machine makes large boxes or small boxes, one at a time, for a total of 700 minutes each day. It takes the machine 10 minutes to make a large box or 5 minutes to make a small box. Which equation represents the possible number of large boxes x and small boxes y the machine can make each day? All right, so I'm just going to do the large boxes. It takes 5 minutes, and the large boxes are x. It's the number of large boxes. And, oh no, I just messed that up. The 5 goes with the small boxes, or 5 minutes go. So there we go. So large boxes take 10 minutes, and the x is the number of large boxes. The small boxes take 5 minutes, and y is the number of small boxes. So without even looking at the thing, it's going to add up to 700 minutes. The large boxes take 10 minutes each, so it's 10 minutes times the number of them, right? If you make only one, that will take 10 minutes. If you make 30, that would make 300 minutes. Now, if we have the small boxes, y is the number of small boxes. You multiply that by the time per box. So 5 times y, same thing. To make one box takes 5 minutes. To make 5 boxes takes 25 minutes, and so on. So this will be your total time, is the time you spent making large boxes and the time you spent making the small boxes. You add those up, it should add up to the total time, which is 700 minutes. We've got over here 10x plus 5y. Okay, B is just exactly what I wrote. A, they matched up the time for the small to the large, and then these ones are just, they're making some kind of unnecessary, inaccurate. Oh, this would only work if each one took 15 minutes, right? Because it's going to ultimately multiply 15, it will distribute to the x and the y. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. And then this one's a quadratic. You're not using a quadratic for this, it's just a linear. Right? Even if you look here, it's a linear equation, but we know it's linear because of the problem that they gave us. Line R in the xy plane has a slope of 4 and passes through the point 0, 6. Again, they gave us the y-intercept. Maybe that's what the SAT likes to do, at least for the medium difficulty ones. Which equation defines R? All right, so again, they gave us the slope. Actually, the other one, you had to at least know what parallel line meant. So in this case, they literally just gave you the slope, which is nice. And our y-intercept, right, when x is 0, y is 6. The y-intercept is when x is 0, right, because that's when it crosses the y-axis, which only happens right at an x value of 0. So our y-intercept, you could call it 6, which means that our equation is going to be, if you write y equals mx plus b, it'll be y equals 4x plus 6, which is option D. All right. A total of 364 paper straws of equal length were used to construct 2 types of polygons, triangles and rectangles. The triangles and rectangles were constructed so that no 2 polygons had a common side. The equation 3x plus 4y equals 364 represents this situation, where x is the number of triangles constructed and y is the number of rectangles constructed. What is the best interpretation of x comma y equals 24 comma 73? All right, well, they just told us what x and y mean. So x is the number of triangles, so that's 24. So you made 24 triangles. And y is the number of rectangles, so that's 73. So if 24 triangles were constructed, then 73 rectangles were constructed. If 24 triangles were constructed, then 73 paper straws were used. No, that's not right. The number of paper straws used is always 364. If 73 triangles were constructed, no, again, the triangles match up with the x, so that would be the y. So these ones are wrong, these ones are wrong. It's just going to be A. X is 24, y is 73, x is the number of triangles constructed, y is the number of rectangles constructed. Yeah, I guess just to understand what they're doing with this equation, you don't really need to get this problem, because again, they literally explicitly say what x and y are. But the reason that you're multiplying x by 3 is because that would be 3 times x is the total straws used on triangles, because each triangle uses 3 straws. And then 4 times y, 4 is the number of straws used per rectangle. So 4 times the number of rectangles is the total number of straws used on rectangles. But you didn't need to know that. All they asked were, if x is this and y is this, what does that mean? The equation y equals 0.1x models the relationship between the number of different pieces of music a certain pianist practices, y, during an X minute practice session. How many pieces did the pianist practice if the session lasted 30 minutes? Number of pieces of music is y, and X is the number of minutes of the practice session. How many pieces do they practice? So X is 30. So all we're doing is plugging in 30 for X, and then you figure out what it is. If you multiply something by 0.1, that's like dividing it by 10, because that's 1/10. So 30 divided by 10 is going to be 3. What this is basically saying, this equation, you don't really need to explain what it's saying, but the reason you're multiplying the number of minutes by 0.1, so dividing it by 1/10, or dividing by 10, multiplying by 1/10, is that, or essentially saying it takes 10 minutes to practice one piece. So for every 10 minutes you have, you can practice one piece. So if you have 30 minutes, you can practice 3 pieces. You don't really have to check this one. It's really just understanding what you have to plug in. Which of the following is an equation of the graph shown in the xy plane above? Let's see, they're all in slope-intercept form, so that's kind of nice. We just look at what our y-intercept is, which is -1. And our slope, well, we need to find another point it crosses. You could also use this point up here. But we're going down 1 and then over 1, 2, 3, 4. So down 1 over 4. The slope is change in y over change in x. Some people say rise over run. So our change in y went down 1, and our change in x, it went up 4, right? Or to the right 4, which is up in the case of x. So our slope is -1/4. If we write it as slope-intercept form, it's y equals mx plus b. That's going to be y equals, our slope we said was -1/4. So -1/4 x plus b plus -1 means -1. So we're looking for -1/4 x minus 1. They might write it as x, or -x over 4. No, they just wrote it as that. They only had one option that had, so as long as you find the slope, you could actually get this one. But I guess if you found the y-intercept, that's not the case. They're all negative, so that doesn't help you. But you could see that it's not that steep, right? It's less steep than a 1-to-1. So you could even just estimate it without finding the exact slope. I mean, it doesn't take any time to find it. But say you were really rushing. You could be like, well, I know the slope is negative, but it's not quite -1. It's going to be some fraction smaller than that. And then you could quickly eliminate all 3 of these. An employee at a restaurant prepares sandwiches and salads. It takes the employee 1.5 minutes to prepare a sandwich and 1.9 minutes to prepare a salad. The employee spends a total of 46.1 minutes preparing X sandwiches and Y salads. Which equation represents the situation? Let's first, X is the number of sandwiches, and each sandwich is 1.5 minutes. And then Y is the number of salads. It takes 1.9 minutes. So if you want to do the total amount of time spent making sandwiches, it'd be the number of sandwiches times the time per sandwich. Just logically, if you make one sandwich, that takes 1.5 minutes. If you make 2, that's 3 minutes. If you take 10, that's 15. And then we've got the number of salads times the time per salad, so times 1.9, like that. And that should add up to the total time, which is 46.1. So we want something that looks like this. 1.5x plus 1.9y equals the total time. Perfect. So it's going to be B. Let's see what they did for distractors. They switched the x and y, so just be careful with that. Don't rush. It's the main way that you could mess that one up. X plus y equals... So this, if they said like the total amount of sandwiches and salads, that could be, if it was a systems problem, maybe they would say the total number of items they sold was 5 or something like that. Then that would mean x plus y has to be 5. But that's not what we're doing here. This has to do with which equation represents the situation. The 46.1 is the time that's used, not the number of items. Where are these numbers coming from? I think they divided, yeah, that's what they did. They divided 46.1 by these numbers. So they're just trying to throw you off there. This would be the value of x and the value of y. So they basically, if you use this equation and solved for x and for y, assuming that the other one was 0, so yeah, these would be like the x and y coordinates, or the x and y intercepts of this graph. So don't do that. They're just trying to overcomplicate it. The y-intercept of the graph 12x plus 2y equals 18 in the xy plane is 0, y. What is the value of y? So they're literally just asking, what's the y-intercept? So there's 2 ways we could do this. For one, we know that the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, which means it's when x is equal to 0. Right? Also, they even give you that x is 0. So you could just plug in 0 for x and then solve for y. So we could do 12 times 0 plus 2y equals 18. And then 12 times 0, that would cancel out, it's just 0. So 0 plus 2y equals 18, or in other words, 2y equals 18. And then you think what times 2 would make 18? Well, y is going to be 9. Or if you feel more comfortable with writing out the operations like this, to get rid of the times 2, you divide by 2, and then y would be 9. So y is going to be 9. That would work. The other thing you could do is you could change it into slope-intercept form. You have 12x plus 2y equals 18. We'd want to get it into y equals mx plus b form. And then whatever the b value is, the b is the y-intercept. So we could subtract 12x from both sides, which gives us 2y equals negative 12x plus 18. That's not y equals mx plus c form because there's a 2 here. So you got to divide everything by 2. And 2y divided by 2 just gives you y, which is what we want. Negative 12x divided by 2 would be negative 6x. That doesn't really matter for this problem, but this would tell you the slope is negative 6. And then 18 over 2 is 9. Right? So our y-intercept is 9, just like it was the other way. So either of those is pretty quick. Just whichever one you feel more comfortable with will work. I would probably recommend at least make sure that you know how to do this, where you can, if they say what's the x-intercept or the y-intercept, you would know for the x-intercept, you'd plug in 0 for y. In this case, it's the y-intercept, you'd plug in 0 for x. It's probably faster to do in your head. Now, doing it this way where you can get it into slope-intercept form, that's useful because you also find out the slope. So if they happen to ask for that, you'd be able to do that. Now here we have a graph of a line. It says line J is shown in the xy plane. Line K, not shown, is parallel to line J. What is the slope of K? Well, parallel lines have the same slope. And they're two lines that have the same slope. They will never intersect. They go on infinitely, the same distance apart the whole time. So essentially, if we find the slope of this line J, then we'll know the slope of line K. And we can do that. They gave us 2 points even, which is very nice of them. They marked them with these little dots. So we just figure out it goes from 5 up to 9. So it goes up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can count if you want, or you can do 9 minus 5. And it goes over 1. So slope is equal to change in y over change in x. Change in y is 4. We can call that the rise over the run. Our change in x is 1, which makes sense. It's going up, so it should be a positive slope. So 4 over 1, that would just simplify to 4. So our slope is 4. Again, that's the slope of line J, but line K has the same slope because it's parallel. Here, the graph shows the possible combinations of the number of pounds of tangerines and lemons that could be purchased for $18 or at a certain store. If Melvin purchased lemons and 4 pounds of tangerines for a total of $18, how many pounds of lemons did he purchase? I mean, this one, you don't even have to write out an equation for it. You could write an equation from the graph. And that would work. You just use 18 as your y-intercept, and you can figure out the slope based on some points on here. But I'm just going to plug it in and see the point on the graph. So purchased lemons and 4 pounds of tangerines. So the pounds of tangerines are down on the x. So that means x is 4, the pounds of tangerines. So it'll be this point on the line, right? Or 1, 2, 3, 4 over, right, like that. And then you just figure out what the y value is, which is going to be 10. That's all they're asking for. How many pounds of lemons did he purchase? 10. Right, so it's just making sure that you know how to interpret this graph. Pounds of tangerines was given 4. So we're trying to find pounds of lemons. A city's total expense budget for 1 year was X million dollars. The city budgeted Y million dollars for departmental expenses and $201 million for all other expenses. Which of the following represents the relationship between X and Y in this context? So X is the millions of dollars in the budget, and Y is the millions of dollars for departmental expenses. So essentially X is the total, right? That's the total budget. And then Y is just one facet of it. So Y is just the departmental expenses, which we have those departmental expenses plus another 201 for the other expenses, right? So departmental plus other adds up to the total, which is X. So it'll be something like this, Y plus 201 equals X. They have the 201 alone. Okay, so if we want to make it look like one of these, then we're just going to get the y on the other side. So subtract y from both. That gives us that 201 is equal to x minus y. X minus y. I know they have it reversed, but it doesn't really matter which side of the equal sign you're on. So x minus y is equal to 201. Perfect. Right, and even logically, that would make sense. The total minus the amount spent on departmental expenses equals the amount spent on other stuff that was in the total. All right, we have another table. Y equals negative 4x plus 40. Which table gives 3 values of x and their corresponding values of y for the given equation? What's nice is the tables all give the same inputs. They're all 0, 1, and 2. So we just plug them into this equation. So -4 plus 40. I did do this on the test, but it'll save a little bit of time. I'm just gonna paste 3 of these down here, and then we could plug in all the values. So plug in 0, plug in 1, plug in 2. So -4 times 0 is 0, and then 0 plus 40 equals 40. So you'd say when x is 0, y is 40. And then our slope is -4, so it's just going to be going down 4 each time, but let's plug them all in. So -4 times 1 is -4 plus 40 gives you 36. Right? That went down 4 from 40, so that's 36 there. And then here, -4 times 2, that's -8. -8 plus 40 is going to be 32, and that's down 4 from 36. So 32 like that. So we want one that's 40, 36, 32, which is choice C. In this case, you couldn't just do based on the y-intercept value when x is 0, because there's also 40 there. So you have to actually do it out. But you could also reason it out just by it's going down -4, it starts at 40. So this one starts at 40 and is going down 4. This one's also going down 4, but it starts the wrong thing. A food truck buys forks for 4 cents each and plates for 48 cents each. The total cost of X forks and Y plates is 661.76. Which equation represents this situation? All right, well, what is X is the number of forks and the price of forks is 4 cents. So you just do 4 cents times the number of forks plus Y is the number of plates. So Y plates times the price per plate. So that's 0.48 times Y, the number of plates. And that would add up to the total that they spent on those two things. So it just looks something like this. You're getting a lot of business, that looks like. 0.04x plus 0.48y equals the total, 661.76. There's no reason that you'd be subtracting the costs, and then this one just mixed up the price for the forks with the number of forks. They put that in the wrong matching. Got 4x plus 3y equals 24. Mario purchased 4 binders that cost X dollars each and 3 notebooks that cost Y dollars each. If the given equation represents this situation, which of the following is the best interpretation of 24 in this context? Well, let's put they're adding up to 4 binders times the cost per binder. So it's going to be the amount spent on binders. And then 3 notebooks times the cost per notebook. That's going to be the amount spent on notebooks. So when you add those up, that's like the total that was spent on binders and notebooks. Total cost in dollars of all binders purchased. No, that's just the binders. Total cost of the notebooks. No. Total cost in dollars for all binders and notebooks. That sounds good. And just to make sure, let's check D. The difference in the total cost. No, what are they talking about there? The difference would be like 4x minus 3y, or you see the absolute value of that because you don't know which one cost more. It seems like a lot of the medium difficulty, or this is easy. So a lot of the linear equations in 2 variables questions have to do with understanding what a word problem is talking about, how to make that into an equation, and then interpreting graphs, interpreting tables, things like that. I guess these are the easy ones, so maybe the hard ones have to do more with actually solving for them. But yeah, I think just make sure that you're comfortable with interpreting word problems in an algebraic context. A producer is creating a video with a length of 70 minutes. The video will consist of segments that are 1 minute long and segments that are 3 minutes long. Which equation represents the situation where x is the number of 1 minute segments? So that's 1 times x, or you just write it as x, because it's the number of them times the minutes used on them. And then y represents the number of 3 minute segments. So y times 3, that's the total minutes spent on minute segments. And that will add up to a video with a length of 70 minutes. So it will look like one of these, x plus 3y equals 70. Real quickly, look at why they messed up the other answer. So this one, they just switched the 1 and the 3. So that's why that one's wrong. 4 times x plus y. This would be if all of the videos are 4 minutes long. Oh, they just added 1 and 3. Yeah, that's silly. And then 4xy doesn't make any sense. They're multiplying the number of short, the number of long, and the total amount for video. Yeah, that's just nonsense. All right, a gardener buys 2 kinds of fertilizers. Fertilizer A contains 60% filler materials by weight, and fertilizer B contains 40% filler materials by weight. Together, the fertilizers bought by the gardener contain a total of 240 pounds of filler materials. Which equation models this relationship, where X is the number of pounds of fertilizer A and y is the number of pounds of fertilizer B. Missed this part, where it's 240 pounds of filler materials. I was looking if we had to do like 1 minus 60%, because I'd want the non-filler materials, but A is 60%, so it's 0.6. Let's say X is the number of pounds of fertilizer A. So the number of pounds times the percent that is filler is going to give you the pounds of filler. Here it's 40% the filler by weight for B, and then the pounds of B is Y. So we'd multiply 0.4, that's 40%, times the total pounds of fertilizer B, because that will be total pounds of fertilizer B that are filler. And that adds up to the total amount of filler between A and B combined is 240. So it should look something like this, which is B. Really, a lot of these are very similar. They're just giving different scenarios, or, this one had to do with fertilizers. We've had ones that were video segments being added together. So they're doing all kinds of problems. You don't have to have any understanding of that thing. Just make sure you could set it up. It seems like most of these are going to be price or percentage or whatever times the amount of those things. In this case, it was a little bit different because it was a percentage times the weight. Just make sure you match up X and Y correctly, that you're adding them together to make the total. In the XY plane, a line has a slope of 6 and passes through the point 0, 8. Again, they're giving us the y-intercept. So B is equal to 8. When X is 0, Y is 8. So that's when it crosses the y-axis. Slope is 6, so that's our M value. Which of the following is an equation of this line? Y equals mx plus B. So if we write that out, your M is 6, that's your slope, plus your B value, your y-intercept, is 8. So it should be y equals 6x plus 8, which is option A. The equation 40x plus 20y equals 160 represents the number of sweaters, X, and the number of shirts, Y. The sweaters is X, the number of shirts is Y, that Yesenia purchased for $160. So 160 is the total. If Yesenia purchased 2 sweaters, how many shirts did she purchase? That would mean that X is 2, and then you're just solving for Y. So 40 times 2 plus 20 times Y equals 160. And we're just figuring out what Y is. 40 times 2 gives us 80. So 80 plus 20Y is equal to 160. And then to get our Y's alone, we'll subtract 80 from both sides. 160 minus 80 is 80. So 20Y is equal to 80. And then that's 20 times Y. We want to find just Y, so we'll divide it by 20 on both sides. Or you can think what times 20 makes 80, which would be 4. Either way, it gives us that same answer of Y equals 4. 80 divided by 20 is 4. 4 is Y. Just to check, how many shirts did she purchase? Y is the number of shirts. So that was what we were looking for. Now to check that you got it correctly, you can just plug them back in at the beginning. So we do 40 times 2, that's the 2 sweaters, plus 20 times our answer, 4, the number of shirts, and that should give us 160, right? That's what our total is supposed to be. 40 times 20 is 80, 20 times 40 is 80, 80 plus 80 does make 160, that checks out. All right, we've got a table here. The table shows 3 values of X and their corresponding values of Y. It has X is 0, Y is 18, when X is 1, Y is 13, when X is 2, Y is 8. There is a linear relationship between X and Y. Which of the following equations represents this relationship? Well, what's really nice is they gave us the y-intercept. So a lot of times, like if you do an algebra class, maybe for the state exam or for the exams that your teacher gives, they'll avoid giving you the y-intercept on these problems because then you have to actually work backwards and figure out what it is. It isn't super involved, but it does take a little more time. So it seems like, at least for these easy problems, the SAT is giving you that. So we know our y-intercept is 18, right? When X is 0, Y is 18, which already eliminates A and C because they put 13. Now we just need to find the slope. And what's nice is they gave it so that the X's are going up by 1 because we know slope is equal to change in Y over change in X, or rise over run. So you could do, for every time X goes up by 1, what's happening to the Y? Change in X is 1. And the Y goes from 18 to 13, so that's going down 5. And then from 13 to 8, it goes down 5. So change in Y is negative 5, or down 5, and our change in X is 1. So we'd say our slope is negative 5, which would mean that if we wrote it out, we would do Y equals mx plus b, which is Y equals, our slope we said was negative 5. Negative 5x plus our y-intercept is 18. So that'd be option D. Now, some people, if you don't feel comfortable with finding the slope this way, I probably try to get comfortable with doing that because that is in some cases an easier way to do it, and it demonstrates that you understand what slope is. Some people might do slope with this formula, or they say y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If you feel more comfortable doing that, that will still give you that same slope. You could choose any of these. I'll do 2, 8, and 1, 13. This will be our y2, and this will be our x2. This will be y1, this will be x1. So y2 is 8, y1 is 13. So we have 8 minus 13 in the top, and then our x2 is 2, our x1 is 1, so we have 2 minus 1 in the denominator. 8 minus 13 gives us -5, and 2 minus 1 would give us 1. Right, so the same thing as before, -5 over 1, which is equal to -5. So our slope here, they did give us -5 as two different options, but then you just make sure you have the right y-intercept of 18. I guess the trick that they were trying to get you here is if you thought the y-intercept is when x is 1, but just think, you could plug in the value and see if it works. It's another thing you could do. So see, like for this one, when you plug in -5 times 0 plus 18, well, -5 times 0 is 0, 0 plus 18 is 18. So that one would work for this point, and for this point, and for this point. This equation will not. Okay. Tony spends $80 per month on public transportation. A 10-ride pass costs $12.50, and a single ride pass costs $1.50. If G represents the number of 10-ride passes Tony buys in a month, and T represents the number of single ride passes Tony buys in a month, let me just mark those variables. G is the number of 10-ride passes. T is the number of single ride passes in a month. Which of the following equations best represents the equation between G and T? So 10 rides cost $12.50, or 10 ride passes. So that's $12.50 is the cost per pass times the number of passes, G. It's the total amount of money he spends on those 10 ride passes. And then single ride passes cost $1.50. So it'd be $1.50 times T, the number of those passes. And that would add up to the total he spends, which is $80 per month. So we want something like this, $12.50 G plus $1.50 T equals 80. Perfect. We can look at the incorrect answers. They just flipped the $12.50 and the $1.50 for this one. That one's wrong. G plus T equals, what the heck? This doesn't make sense. This is the number of rides plus the number of rides equals the sum of the prices. Yeah, they're just trying to trick people there. And then this one would work if it was like he did 80 total rides, right? The number of rides plus the number of rides. That might be something that would show up if you're doing systems of equations. But in this case, 80 is not the number of rides, it's the total money. So that's why you need to multiply it by the cost per ride. Here we've got a table, we've got this description. So it says the table is characteristics of rock types. And they have the different rock types, the weights per volume, kind of like density. Density specifically would be mass, not weight, but same kind of thing. And then cost per pound. All right. A city is planning to build a rock retaining wall, a monument, and a garden in a park. The table above shows 4 rock types that will be considered for use in the project. Also shown for each rock type is its weight per volume in pounds per cubic foot, and the cost per pound in dollars. The equation 0.03 times 120W plus 0.18 times 180Z plus 3,385.80 equals 7,576.20 gives the total cost in dollars of the rocks used in the project in terms of the number of feet cubed of limestone, W. Limestone is going to be W, and the number of feet cubed of basalt, Z. Well, they were just using limestone and basalt in the table, unless they add more to it. All 4 rock types are used. Oh, never mind. All 4 rock types are used in the project. Which of the following is the best interpretation of 3,385.80 in this context? I assume that just means that that they already did the calculation for the other 2 types of rock, like the granite and the sandstone, so those are factored into the 3,385. Because for the other ones, what are they taking? They're taking the price per pound and then weight per volume times the volume, because they give you, the volume. Essentially, the 120 times W is using limestone is red. Okay, I mixed these up. Limestone is red, and just what I underlined here. 120 is the density, and we're doing the density times the volume, which gives us the weight. Again, it should be mass, but they're doing in weight. So the weight times the price per weight. So this whole thing accounts for the price of all of that limestone. And then this next thing, 180, is using the 180, essentially the density of the basalt. you're multiplying that by the volume of basalt. So the number of feet cubed is the volume. Multiply that. So that would give you the weight of basalt that's used. And then you multiply that by the price per weight. So this is the price of all of the basalt you use. So you're adding that up with this other number, which they didn't explain what it is, but it has to be like these ones. This is the price of all the limestone. This is the price of all the basalt. So this should be the price of all of the other rocks used, or the cost of it. So the cost of the granite and sandstone needed for the project. I mean, that already sounds good to me, but let's check the other ones. The cost of the basalt and the limestone. Note, again, the basalt is this 0.18 times 180Z that I underlined in purple. So that's already accounted for. And the limestone is the thing I underlined in red, the 0.03 times 120W. The cost of the basalt needed for the project. So this is just saying it's just the basalt. No. The cost of the sandstone needed for the project. The reason that it can't be this, because you could argue, well, what if they only got sandstone? Is because they specifically said all 4 rock types are used. And, assume that it's not meaning that you already had granite or someone gave you granite for free because they listed the price of the granite. So it's specifically, this is going to be the granite plus the sandstone. And the reason I guess I didn't have to go through that and explain that it's the cost part because cost is the only thing that shows up on here. I was thinking they were going to have some options. It's like the total weight of the basalt or the total weight of the granite or something like that. But no, they tell you it's the cost, but that's how you can understand this equation. If you were rushing, then you maybe look at the options first before trying to understand. Just like, well, they accounted for the basalt. They told me that, and the limestone. So then it's got to be the other two. The equation 46 equals 2x plus 2y gives the perimeter of a rectangular rug that length x in feet and the width y in feet. So again, I'm just going to do length is x and width is y. The width of the rug is 8 feet. What is the length? If you have a rectangle, you would have 2 lengths and 2 widths. So if you want, you could even do it as this diagram. They gave us the width. So the width is 8. So 8 and 8. And what they say, the perimeter is 46, because it's to add up to that. X plus x is the 2x plus 8 plus 8, that's 2y. So plus 16 has to add up to the total perimeter, which is 46. Now we would just get our x's alone by subtracting 16 from both sides. That gives us that 2x is equal to 30. And then to find that, you think what times 2 makes 30, which would be 15, or you could divide both sides by 2, it could be the same answer. 30 divided by 2 is 15. So 15, if you want to plug that back in, 2 times 15 would give you 30. 2 times 8 gives you 16. 30 plus 16 is 46, so that does work. A line in the xy plane has a slope of 1/9 and passes through the point 0, 14. So again, they gave us the slope and they gave us the y-intercept, which is 14. When x is 0, y is 14. Which equation represents this? So if we put it in slope-intercept form, you would do y equals 1/9, our slope, times x, plus our y-intercept, so plus 14. We want y equals 1/9 x plus 14, that's option D. Vivian bought party hats and cupcakes for $71. Each package of party hats costs $3, and each cupcake costs $1. If Vivian bought 10 packages of party hats, how many cupcakes did she buy? Right, well, the hats cost 3. You'd say 3 times h plus cupcakes cost 1. 1 times cupcake, but you could just write C as well. 1C is the same as C. Easier to keep track of it. That would add up to the total that was spent, $71. If Vivian bought 10 packages of party hats, so that means this is the number of packages, right? It's the price per package. It'd be 3 times 10, and then you just got to figure out how many cupcakes. So plus C equal to 71. 3 times 10 makes 30. What plus 30 would be 71? You can actually think of that. What do you have to add to 30 at 71 is going to be 41. But we could also subtract 30 from both sides. 71 minus 30 is also 41. So 41 cupcakes. I guess you don't, when you bubble it, I keep circling the C equals part, but all you'd say is there are 41 cupcakes or packages of cupcakes. Just cupcakes, it's not package. All right, here, this one gets cut off. I guess it doesn't really matter. But we've got a graph of a line, and then you've got different tables. The graph shows the linear relationship between x and y. Which table gives 3 values of x and their corresponding values of y for this relationship? They're all 0, 1, and 2 again, but you could just check what the point values are on here. You don't need to find the slope or the y-intercept. So when x is 0, looks like y is -5, right? It's between the -4 and the -6, or you can count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first one is 0, -5. So we know it's not B, it's not A, because those are 0, 0. It doesn't pass through the origin. It could be still C or D because they're both 0, -5. And you can see this one's going up, this one's going down. So even without looking at the points, we actually know it's a D because that's the only one that's going up. But let's just check the points. So when x is 1, that's -3. 0 should be -5. 1 should be -3. And then 2 is at -1. And that would be option D. 0, -5, 1, -3, 2, -1. The table above shows some pairs of x values and y values. Which of the following equations could represent the relationship between x and y? All right, well, it's a linear relationship, it looks like. This case, they did not give us the y-intercept on the table. So this is more what you would expect, right? You have to actually figure out when x is 0, what is it? But you can do that with the slope, or you can just work backwards. Working backwards is using the slope. But first, to do the slope, our change in y, it's going up 2, up 2, up 2. That doesn't necessarily mean the slope is 2. In this case, it is. You have to also check the change in x. So if x is going up by 1, then that change in y actually is the slope. But our slope is equal to change in y over change in x. It's going up 2 every time x goes up 1, which means our slope is 2 over 1 is 2. Slope is 2. If you want to find when the x value is 0, what's our y value? Just think like, what did you have to add 2 to get 5? Or you can go backwards, like subtract 2 from it, which will give you to 3, because 3 plus 2 is 5. So in this case, our y-intercept is 3. So if we wrote out the equation in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, you would get our slope is 2, so y equals 2x plus our y-intercept is 3. That'd be option A. And if you feel more comfortable, you'll get the same slope if you do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And the other thing you could do if you want, especially if you have extra time at the end, is just plug in these different values. So when x is 1, it'd give you that y. So 2 times 1 plus 3, well, 2 times 1 is 2, 2 plus 3 is 5. Then you would check this one. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 plus 3 is 7. All right, that works. X is 3, 2 times 3 is 6, 6 plus 3 is 9. Okay, that works. And then 2 times 4 is 8, 8 plus 3 is 11, so that works. It wouldn't work, even if one of the points works for one of the other ones, they wouldn't all work. So that's one way you can check, especially after you already have the answer. It's easy to check just the one, but say you didn't know how to solve this, you could just check for all 4 of them and see which one works for multiple points, or for all of the points. Again, if it works for one point, that doesn't necessarily mean it's right. Line would have to work for all of the points. The equation x plus y equals 1,440 represents the number of minutes of daylight between sunrise and sunset, x. So x is the number of minutes of daylight, and the number of minutes of non-daylight, y. So y is the number of minutes of non-daylight on a particular day in Oak Park, Illinois. If this day has 670 minutes of daylight, how many minutes of non-daylight does it have? Well, it's just the total number of minutes is 1,440. So they gave us, which one? They gave us the daylight. So they gave us the x. It's 670 plus we don't know what the y is. We'll add up to the total. And then you just gotta solve for y. You do that by subtracting 670 from both sides to get the y alone. And what would it be? 70? I think it's 770. Let's check that. 770 plus 670, that would be 1,300 plus 140, which should be 1,440. Perfect. Line K is defined by y equals 1/4 x plus 1. Line J is parallel to line K in the xy plane. What is the slope of J? So it's parallel to K. If they're parallel, they have the same slope. So we just need to find the slope of line K, and then we know the slope of line J. And same thing, y equals mx plus b is our slope-intercept form. They gave it to us in that form. And m represents the slope. So rise over the run, the change in y over change in x. So our slope is just 1/4. That's the thing that you are multiplying x by right there. For a camping trip, a group bought x 1-liter bottles of water and y 3-liter bottles of water. So it's going to be something with the total liters, I bet. So it will be like 1 times the number of those plus 3 times the number of 3 liters for a total of 240 liters of water. Which equation represents this situation? So it'll be this. Again, 1x is the same as x. You can just rewrite it as that. X plus 3y equals 240. x plus 3y equals 240 right there. Liters per that bottle times the number of those bottles. So 1 times the number of them, x, plus 3 liters per bottle times the number of 3-liter bottles. A teacher is creating an assignment worth 70 points. The assignment will consist of questions worth 1 point and questions worth 3 points. Which equation represents this situation where x represents the number of 1-point questions, so x is the number of 1, and y represents the number of 3-point questions? It's going to be very similar to the last one, where we're going to have 1 times x, because x is the number of them and they're worth 1 point, and then 3 is the point value of the y 3-point questions, y being the number of them, and that adds up to the total, which is 70 points. Is that? Was the last one was 240, so the only thing that changed was 240 became 70. Again, 1x can be written as just x, so it could be x plus 3y equals 70, which is option D. And the distractor answers, some of them are, like this, if you're rushing, you could potentially mix up the x and the y. This one, I mean, again, they're multiplying both of them by 4. So it's like both of them are the sum of 3-point and 1 point. That doesn't make any sense. And then this 4 times xy doesn't make any sense. A shipment consists of 5-pound boxes and 10-pound boxes with a total weight of 220 pounds. There are 13 10-pound boxes in the shipment. How many 5-pound boxes are in this shipment? They didn't tell us how many 5-pound ones, but it's 5 times x, let's call that, you can call it anything, and 10-pound boxes, there are 13 of those. So it'd be 10 times 13, and that'll add up to the 220. And now 10 times 13 is 130. So that's the total pounds that are from 10-pound boxes, because you have 13 10-pound boxes. So each of those is 10, so 13 times 10 gives you the total weight of those. Now we have 5x plus 130 equals 220. To get the 5x alone, or the x's alone, you just subtract 130 from both sides. And that would mean 5x is equal to 220 minus 130 is 90. So 5x equals 90. So this is the total weight from the 5-pound boxes. We want to know how many of them, so just divide by the weight per box, which is divided by 5. And that means x is equal to 90 divided by 5, which is 18. You think of that as divide by 10 times 2, because dividing by 5 is like multiplying by 1/5, which is equivalent to 2/10, right? Times 2 over 10. So x is 18. And just to check that quickly, you do 5 times 18 is 90, 90 plus 10 times 13, so 90 plus 130 is 220, the total weight. All right, we have some more tables here. Y equals 70x plus 8. Which table gives 3 values of x and their corresponding values of y for the given equation? All right, they've got a lot of these where you just have to basically interpret the equation and see which table is correct. So all of them have x values of 0, 2, and 4. So we just find, right, y equals 70 times these different values of x plus 8. So maybe the same thing where I copy this. I don't know if this counts as lazy or a smart trick. Maybe a little bit of both. But 70 times 0, 70 times 2, and 70 times 4. And we'll see what those outputs should be. We've got, what you could do is you could also look at it and say, okay, your y-intercept is 8, so it should start at 8, which these two start at 8, so that would already eliminate B and C. And then your slope is 70, so it should be going up by 70 every time x goes up by 1. So when x goes up by 2, it should go up by double 70, so it should go up by 140, which it looks like A is doing that. But let's just check it to be sure. So 70 times 0 plus 8, that's 0 plus 8 equals 8. So when x is 0, y is going to be 8. Again, that's the y-intercept they gave you. And then when x is 2, 2 times 70 is 140. 140 plus 8 is 148. So when x is 2, y is 148. And then when x is 4, 4 times 70 is 280. 280 plus 8 gives you 288. So when x is 4, y is 288. Again, like we said, that was A. Could have done it without plugging them in. This is just a good way to make sure you don't mess up, because say they had 78 and 148 as the options here. Luckily, D was not too mean with that. If someone was really rushing, they might have gone, oh, the slope is 70, so just add 70, not realizing that the x's go up by 2s. So, doing it this way, you don't have to risk making that mistake. You might want to do it both ways just to check, because it's pretty quick either way. But make sure you can interpret that this is the y-intercept is 8, so that makes sense. It's 0, 8. This is your slope, how to use that slope. What is the y-intercept of the graph of y equals 34x plus 81 in the xy plane? All right. Well, our y-intercept is just when x is 0, what's your y value? So you could plug in 0 here. Or if you know slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. The reason that works, that the b is the y-intercept, is when x is 0, you don't have to worry about this part. So it's just the b, y equals b. So that'd be 81. And again, that's your y-coordinate. The y-intercept is when the x value is 0, what's the y? So if it's 81, it's 0, 81. And if they asked for the x-intercept, just be careful. They could ask for that. The x-intercept is when y is 0, which sounds, I think when you first learn that, it's confusing. It's like, why is the y-intercept when x is 0 and why is the x-intercept? Well, it's because the y-intercept should be a value for y, right? It might be 0 if the y-intercept happens to be the origin, but it could be any number. But the x is 0 because it's where it crosses that y-axis, and that's not to the right, not to the left. So the x value, which is how far to the right or how far to the left, is 0. For the x-intercept, it's the opposite, right? You're not going up, not going down, so the y value is 0. It's just how far to the left or how far to the right do you go. In this case, again, it was y-intercept, so just how far up is it when x is 0? 81. We've got, what is the y-intercept of the line graphed? Well, we've got the y-intercept is right here, so it's 0 over 5 up. Again, y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, and yeah, you can literally just find the point there. What do they do for distractors? The origin, I mean, that's not even on the line. Negative 5, 0, that's here. That's not on the line either. And then 0, 9. They didn't do good distractors. They could have done negative 9, 0, use this point. But I guess this one's supposed to just make sure that you understand like how a coordinate plane even works and what it means to be on a line or something. I guess to know what the y-intercept is as well. Here we have f equals 2.5x plus 7.00y. In the equation above, f represents the total amount of money in dollars a food truck charges for x drinks, so x is the number of drinks, and y salads. The price in dollars of each drink is the same. The price in dollars of each salad is the same. So it looks like the price of each drink is $2.50. So it's $2.50 times the number of drinks. And then the price of each salad is $7, 7 times the number of salads. All right, which of the following is the best interpretation for the number 7 in this context, so the 7.00? Again, that's the price per salad, because you're multiplying that by the number of salads. Price in dollars of one drink, the price in dollars of one salad. So per salad, I mean, price of one salad. The number of drinks bought during the day, no, that's y, right? Oh, x is the number of, so that would be x, the number of drinks bought during the day. The number of salads, that's y. Because it's x drinks. That means that, like, when they say x drinks, that means that the price of the drink is x. That means that's the number of them, right? It's like, are there 3 drinks? Are there 5 drinks? Right. So that would be B. A line in the xy plane has a slope of negative 1/2 and passes through the point 0, 3. Which equation represents this line? So 0, 3 is your y-intercept. So you'd say b equals 3. And the slope they gave you, slope is negative 1/2. So again, if we're doing slope-intercept form, make sure you know slope-intercept form well, because it seems like it's coming up on a lot of these. I know these are just the easy ones, but just free points, and if you know it, you can do it really quickly. I know I'm writing it out each time, but you could probably just go straight from knowing your y-intercept or your y-intercept and your slope to picking the equation. But y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3 is right there. I mean, it really doesn't take much time to just write it out. So that might be worth doing just to make sure you don't make a mistake. Because if you're rushing and doing it in your head, you could reasonably mix them up. But these problems really shouldn't take you too long, as long as you understand how to interpret slope-intercept form. Jay walks at a speed of 3 miles per hour and runs at a speed of 5 miles per hour. He walks for W hours and runs for R hours. Okay, so speed and number of hours. So this is like speed is miles per hour times hours. That's going to give you the number of miles. So 3 times W is the total miles that he walked. And then 5 miles per hour. I don't know if that counts as running, to be honest. No shade, but 5 miles an hour. I mean, it could be jogging maybe, or speed walking, but because how fast would that be? That would be 5 miles per hour. That means he's doing a 12-minute mile. I mean, yeah, you kind of have to jog, at least to do that. It's not very fast, but we have 5 times R, 5 miles per hour times R hours. That's going to give you the number of miles that he runs. So he combines for a total distance of 14 miles. Which equation represents this situation? So it would be this top one. It's exactly what I just wrote. 3W plus 5R equals 14. What is the y-intercept of the line graphed? The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So that's just going to be here. That's 0 over 8 up. All right, so these questions are really not too mean. The equation 46 equals 2a plus 2b gives the relationship between the side lengths a and b of a certain parallelogram. A equals 9. What is the value of b? This is not true for all parallelograms. It's just for some reason... Oh, that's the perimeter of this parallelogram, I guess, is 46. So you add up the 2 a sides and the 2 b sides. It will add up to 46. But you don't even need to know that to get this one. You just plug in what they gave you. So 46 equals 2 times, they give you a is 9, so 2 times 9 plus 2 times b. And again, b is what we're solving for. So 2 times 9 is 18. 18 plus 2b is going to equal 46. To get the b alone, we'll subtract 18 from both sides, which gives us 28. So 28 is equal to 2b, and we just want b. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. Or you think what times 2 makes 28, which is 14. But 28 divided by 2 is also going to be 14. So b equals 14. Now to check that just really quickly, just plug it in. 2 times 14 gives you 28, and 2 times 9 gives you 18. 18 plus 28 gives you 46, which is what we want. So that's good. Naomi bought both rabbit snails and, I don't know how to say this, Narit snails? I don't really know the types of snails, but whatever. She bought these types of snails and these types of snails for a total of $52. That's your total amount spent. Each rabbit snail costs $8. This is the price per rabbit snail. And each Narit snail costs $6. If Naomi bought 2 Narit snails, how many rabbit snails did she buy? So first, if we write the equation out, it would be the cost per snail times the number, or cost per rabbit snail times the number of those. They didn't give us things. So I'll just do R and N. You could do X and Y, it would be fine. Plus 6 times, let's do N, equals 52. Where R and N are the number of those types of snails. They gave us that there are 2 Narit snails. So it'd be 8R plus 6 times this given 2 for the N value equals 52. 6 times 2 gives us 12. So 8R plus 12 equals 52. And now to get R alone, we'll just subtract 12 from both sides. Well, this will give us the R's alone. So 8R equals 40. That's 52 minus 12. And then what times 8 would make 40? R is going to be 5. Or, again, if you prefer, just divide both sides by 8 to get rid of that times 8. And that means that R equals 40 over 8, which is also 5. And to check it, just plug it into this equation that I wrote. 8 times 5 would be 40. And they gave us the 2, so 6 times 2 equals 12. 40 plus 12 equals 52, which is what we want. Last week, an interior designer earned a total of $1,258 from consulting for X hours and drawing up plans for Y hours. The equation 68X plus 85Y equals 1,258 represents this situation. Which of the following is the best interpretation of 68 in this context? All right, well, X is the number of hours consulting. So 68 is being multiplied by X. So that'd be the cost per hour of consulting. Designer earned $68 per hour consulting last week. Okay, that sounds good. Interior designer worked 68 hours. No, the number of hours is X. I didn't say X equals 68. It's being multiplied by X. The interior designer earned $68 per hour drawing up plans last week. No, the plans was y, right? The number of hours for the plans. Well, the interior designer made $85, so not 68. And then the interior designer worked 68 hours for the consulting. Oh, drawing up plans. Okay, I misspoke before. The number of hours drawing up plans was actually y, and the number of hours consulting was x. But either way, it's none of these, it's a. So 68 is the cost per hour. You're multiplying by the number of hours to get the total cost for all of that consulting work. This is 85 times y is the price per hour of, what is it, planning, drawing up plans, times the number of hours drawing up plans. And that gives you the total cost of all of that plan drawing, right? And that adds up to the total cost for everything, which is this given number, 1,258. The y-intercept of the graph of y equals negative 6x minus 32 in the xy plane is 0, comma y. What is the value of y? Well, here they gave it to us in slope-intercept form. So if you know that this y equals mx plus b, the b is the y-intercept. So you're adding negative 32, right? It's minus 32 at the end, so that means that the b value is negative 32. So if you wrote that out, it would just be 0, comma negative 32. So negative 32 will be our answer. If you don't feel comfortable with the slope-intercept form, again, try to get comfortable with it because it'll be very helpful on the test. But you can also say, well, my x value is 0, so let me plug that in. And then I get y equals negative 6 times 0 minus 32, and you just have to figure out what the y value is. And y equals, well, the 0 will cancel it out, so it's just y equals negative 32. Right, so we get the same answer either way. I really do make sure that you're comfortable with this, but both methods are just as fast. What is the equation of the line shown in the xy plane above? All right, well, if we know slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Our y-intercept is the plus b, so it's where it crosses the y-axis. That's at 0, comma 3. So we could say our y-intercept is 3. And then our slope, it's going to be negative. So we quickly eliminate c and a because they have a positive slope. But it's going down 3 and then over 1. So you go 1, 2, 3 down over 1. Remember that the slope is the change in y over the change in x. So it goes down 3 over 1, which simplifies to negative 3. So our slope is negative 3. Our y-intercept is 3. So we'd say y equals negative 3x plus 3, which is option B. Davio bought some potatoes and celery. So potatoes and celery. The potatoes cost 69 cents per pound. And the celery costs 99 cents per pound. All right, it's interesting. I would think potatoes would cost more than celery, but maybe it's just potatoes are more dense. So I think a pound of celery is a lot more than I'm picturing. If Davio spent $5.34, that's a total, and bought twice as many pounds of celery as potatoes. Twice as many pounds of celery. So there's more celery than potatoes. How many pounds of celery did Davio buy? So this one's kind of a systems of equations. I feel like this is definitely the most involved, at least of the ones recently here. Still not too bad. Especially if you have a calculator, it's really not bad, a graphing calculator. But Davio bought some potatoes. The potatoes cost 69 cents per pound. So let's do that times the number of pounds of potatoes. If you want, you can write out a let statement. Let P be the pounds of potatoes. Plus 0.99 times, let's do pounds of celery is C. Again, you could write a let statement if it helps you keep track. Add up to the total cost. And then our other thing is that you have twice as many pounds of celery. So this is where I've seen a lot of kids mess up. When you're writing this equation, you'd go, oh, there's more celery, so I'm going to do 2 times the celery. But the celery is the bigger thing. So if you want to make an equation, which means you're making them equal, you have to double the potatoes to make it equal to the celery. Oh, there should be a P. Because say you had 5 pounds of potatoes, you have to have double that, so 10 pounds of celery. So this is how you would make it work. 10 equals 2 times 5. All right, so you double the smaller one if you're writing the equation like this. All right, so if we have it like this, then this would be easier to solve for the potatoes because you just plug in the value of C if you want to do substitution. Again, if you want to graph it, you can just graph it and then it will work out. But I'm going to get the P alone. So P is equal to C over 2. Just divide both sides by 2, which also makes sense, right? If the celery is double the potatoes, then the potatoes are half of the celery. And then you can plug this in, for your p value, because that's equal to p. So we'll do 0.69 times c over 2, 0.99 times c, and that all adds up to 534. Well, when you multiply this by a half, it's going to give you a ½ cent. I mean, you could do math with that. It doesn't actually matter. You get the same answer either way. But I'm just going to get rid of it by multiplying everything by 2. Because if you multiply everything on the left and the right by 2, then it works out. So this 2, we'll just get rid of the half. This 2 will double 0.99, so that'd become 1.98. And then this one, 2 times 5.34, that's going to be 10.68. And then here we have 0.69 times c left. 0.69 c. All right, now we can add up our c's. So we have 0.69 and 1.98, which would be 2.67 c is equal to 10.68. Oh, I really want to use a calculator for this, but this whole video I haven't used a calculator, so I'm just gonna do long division. On the real test, definitely use a calculator. And what I'm talking about is to get the value of c, which is what we're solving for, the pounds of celery. How many pounds of celery did Davio buy? That's c. You just divide both sides by 2.67 to get the c alone. So what I'm complaining about is this is going to be not the nicest numbers here. 10.68. I mean, I can just write that as 1,068 divided by 267. I mean, you could also ballpark it. So looking at these, it's definitely more than 2, because doubling this would give you like 530 something, 534, I think. And I mean, 2.5 goes into 10 4 times. So it's probably going to be 4, but let's see. If you do 2.67 times 4, be 8 plus is 2/3 times 4 would be 8/3, should be 2, so 10.67. That would kind of work. Maybe it's going to be something a little bit off from that, but let's see. 4 goes into there, 28. 4 times that is 24, 26. 8, 10. Okay, 4. So 4 is our answer. If you want to check that, you can plug it in. So we know if c is 4, that means that if c is equal to 2p, then p is equal to 2. So you have 2 pounds of potatoes and 4 pounds of celery. So if we plug that into our original equation, we get 0.69 times 2 plus our celery, 0.99 times 4. I don't really want to do this, but okay, this will be 1.38 plus times 4. Sorry, this would be 3.96. And when you add those up, that would be 5.34. So that's what we want. Okay, perfect. So D is equal to 4 pounds of celery. This one, I really think this could have been in the medium section, or even could have technically put in the systems equation. Now, if you use a calculator, you just graph the 2 lines. So you'd graph this line, graph this line. If you have some calculators, you'd have to get one of these variables alone to type it in a graphing calculator. But if you have NumWorks or one of the more advanced TI ones, you could get that to work. And then you just see where they cross. And then just make sure you keep track of which one you were using as X, which one is Y, so you can find this value here. It would just be the bigger of the 2, right? If you get a 2 and a 4, and you know C is double P, then C is the 4. Oh, there's a lost problem. Perfect. All right, so these were all of the easy problems. Again, if you want to go back to any specific problem or type of problem, look in the description. I'll have all of the IDs, all of the timestamps where you can find that part of the video, and they'll have a brief description of what the problems were. This was the only one that was really systems that was in here. I think there were more systems will be in the other ones. They had a lot of these ones where it's just like interpreting a line on a graph, make sure that you understand what y-intercept is, no slope-intercept form, interpreting like a word problem and making it an equation, or interpreting what the different parts of the equation would be or the word problem would be. And I think what else? They had the tables. So figuring out how a table can be used to find the equation, or how the equation can be used to find the correct table. And yeah, it just seemed like they did focus a lot on word problems and interpreting them in a linear context. So I think those are all pretty doable. I'll be putting up the medium and hard video for this topic pretty soon, as well as all of the other algebra and then all of the other math videos. And eventually the reading and writing ones as well. But if you have any questions or concerns, or if you have a better way of doing one of the problems, or if you caught a mistake, or even just a different way of doing something, feel free to comment that below. And really, thank you for watching. All right, thanks.